2 parts on making this Maple Burl box with a threaded lid. Now it was supposed to be 1 part, it's supposed to last about 20 minutes and have a friction fit lid. But when I did my hollow form with the threaded finial, Mike said I didn't spend enough time showing how the threading jig worked. So I decided I would do that, and I ran into some problems. And you're going to get to see the problems and how I came about repairing them. So stick around and let's see what happens with this one.
The first thing I have to do is harvest the burl I want to use from the rest of this log.
I want this to be the top, so I need to draw a line somewhat parallel with that, and I'll cut that on the bandsaw.
I used a felt pen to draw a circle that I can follow with the bandsaw to try to get this as round as possible. I want to flatten the bottom on the disc sander. When the lines have disappeared, I will know the bottom is flat.
I've got a little notch here, so I've made a mark for that to fit against, so I can get it back to the same spot it was in before. Then I'm going to take this dowel, put it between here and my live center, and use that to force it on there after I put on the hot glue that's going to hold it there. At least that's what we're hoping. Now with the dowels providing support there, I'm going to try to turn this round and not lose too much of this nice figure that's in here. I want to keep that inclusion, definitely. turn away some of the glue block here so I have better access when sanding. One of the difficulties of sanding things like this is that you often end up rounding over the edges instead of having a nice, clean, crisp edge, specifically in areas like this. As it comes along, your sandpaper wants to go in a little depending on which way you're turning it. So I've found, lately I've been trying to use my random orbit sander. It has a nice flat bottom on it, and instead of having this spinning, I just do it while it's still. I'm going to try that again today and see how it works.
While sanding this way, I try to keep three things in mind. The first one is to keep the sander moving at all times. Letting it sit for any time at all could cause a divot. That would make me real unhappy. Second thing is, each time I turn the burl a bit, to overlap. And the third and most important is to keep the sander flat on the burl. I am under no illusion that when I finish this box, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be threaded. I'm sure that I'll have to return this. It's just real unlikely that I'm going to be able to make it perfect. I am running through all the grits up to 400, but I'm sure you don't want to see all of that done.
Seems to do a nice job and preserve that sharp edge.
I'll use the parting tool to start separating the top of the box from the bottom, and then finish the cut with a saw. Now I can start turning the inside of the bottom of the box. While there is no actual grain in a burl, I found quickly that I got much less tear out scraping the bottom if I turned in reverse. And then I found that scraping the side worked better turning it forward.
I'm going to put a little bit of a recess in here now, and that's the area that will be threaded. It's not going to be very deep. Just go in there maybe 1/4 of an inch. I have sanded this now. I've sanded the face, the inside, the side of it, and the bottom, but I have not sanded this area here that's going to be threaded. I did not want to take a chance on changing it. It's at a very nice straight angle in there right now, and I want to make sure it stays that way for the threading. So now I guess we'll go on to that next step. The jig is comprised of 2 main parts. There's the cutter, which fits into my Jacob chuck and then goes into the headstock. It does the turning, does the heavy work on this end. Then there's this part of the jig to which you attach the chuck or the faceplate or whatever you've got holding the piece that's going to be threaded. You have to make sure that it's parallel with the bedways. Then you have an adjustment here, which lets you move it in and out in this direction. And this one is what turns when you are doing the threading. Mine is 16 threads per inch, therefore it's going to put 16 threads per inch on the inside or on the outside if you're doing the male threads. You have to make sure that the corner of the bit lines up just inside what you're going to be cutting. Now let's try a little demonstration here. I have sighted down along the side of the box bottom to make sure it's parallel to the bedways. The cutter will be running at 1500 RPM. When the threading is finished, if you want to examine the threads and possibly put it back, you can simply loosen the banjo and turn it out, look at them, and if necessary, you can put it right back exactly where it was. In order to get the size for the male threads, I need to use my calipers and measure the largest diameter across here and then add 35 thousandths of an inch to do the male threads. The largest measurement I'm finding is 3.34 inches. So I'll need to make the piece for the male threads 3.69 inches.
I'm going to cut these two discs out of this piece of fur. They're going to be glued together, and I'm going to use them to make a jig which will hold the top of the box when I'm turning it. After gluing up these two discs, I realized they were not going to be thick enough, so back to the bandsaw. The third disc had a bad split in it, so I put a hose clamp around it to hold it tight, and I'm counting on the glue between the two discs to hold it permanently.
The outside diameter of the top of the box is 4 9/16 of an inch. I want to make a mark here at 4.5. I want to open it up to that and then slightly touch it up until this will fit in there, just barely going in. I think that's exactly what I want.
The straight side of the lid measures at most 2 inches, therefore I have to go in straight a minimum of 2 inches for it to fit.
And it's deep enough.
To push round objects through a bandsaw blade, it's a good idea to use a V-block, and that's what I'm preparing to make here. One V-block ready to go. Cutting these slots will allow me to use a hose clamp to tighten this wood against the box top.
I've wrapped masking tape around the edge that's finished, just to try to protect a little bit, because this is very rough. I'm not too worried about sanding this, making a showpiece of a jig. Now I'm going to put this over this. I'll tighten it up with the clamp, the hose clamp, and that should hold it so I can turn it. I have to be sure to keep the hose clamp up 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to be turning away the jig as well as this 1/4 of an inch up. So I want to keep the hose clamp away from it and not end up hitting it with my gouge. Now let's try that now. I have put electrical tape around the clamp just to try to protect myself a little bit from the flange that sticks out on that. And now I'm going to try trimming away part of this jig with the skew chisel. We'll see how that goes. I've never tried this before, so another learning experience.
I'm drawing a circle to use as a reference when cutting the tenon to size for the threads.
Alright, to line this up, I have to look down across the part that's going to be threaded and try to make sure it's absolutely parallel to the bedways. This is as close as I can get it. Next thing is to move it in. I think that should do it right about there. Maybe that's a little too much. Come back. Alright, let's give that a try and see what happens. I have the speed set at 1250 RPM, and I'll very slowly and carefully push that in there. Every day of turning is a day of learning, and boy am I learning today. I was warned that maple is a very tough wood to thread, and a burl is worse. These threads are totally knackered. So that gives me a couple of choices. I can throw it away, but I'm too stubborn to do that. So it's on to try to repair this. What I want to do is make a ring out of maple, clean this up, glue that on, and then start over from that point, threading this. To make it more difficult, my jig decided to self-destruct when I took it apart. Probably because I made this a little too thin, and this being fir, it's just not a good enough wood. So I'm going to have to rebuild this as well. I'll make the walls a little thicker so that they'll withstand this, hopefully better than that. And after I slam my head on the wall a couple of times, I'll get back to this. Well, that brings us to the end of part one. And I just changed my mind about what I just said about rebuilding that jig. I come up with a better way to do it. So come back and see how that works. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Remember to subscribe. Have a great day in your shop. Thanks again.